hold on to your hats, the countdown to the biggest wellness event of the year is on.
Join us on August 15 and 16 in Melbourne for not 1 but 2 days of Powerhouse Wellness, featuring 11 of Australia's most inspiring, entertaining, educating, fermentating speakers.
Damo, what is fermentating?
MP, I'll tell you at the summit.
Your favourite wellness couch speakers are joined by special guest Nat Kringoudis on all things hormones and female health.
Join the Up for a Chat girls, the wellness guys, the natural nutritionist Steph Lowe, Cale Brock, Quirky Cookings, Joe Whitten, Marcus Pearce, and the rest of your favourite wellness couch podcasters.
Regular and VIP tickets are still available, but hurry before this summit is sold out. For tickets, go to www.thewellnesssummit.com. The Wellness Summit is proudly brought to you by Well and You. Be someone that makes you happy.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother.
I'm Julie Tenner.
And I'm Bridget Wood.
Today we're discussing infertility. So we'd love you to join this journey with us, and we have Bridget, who has such depth of knowledge that I'm even just excited to hear about it. So Bridget.
Yeah, this will be a kind of a really personal one, I suppose, to really go into. So I don't know where other people are at with this, but this has certainly been a big journey of mine to travel. And I'll preface the whole thing with saying that I actually am not really comfortable with the word infertility. The Western, I guess, model of things loves to use that term, but for me, I think it's quite a finite thing, and really kind of suggests a sense of that kind of decision, basically, on how a woman is. But we are such fluid beings and so ever-changing in terms of our health and our wellness and our bodies. And so I really look at the term as like sort of nurturing your fertility as opposed to infertility. So that's probably the term that I'm going to use as we discuss this topic.
And doesn't that flip it from being something really negative to having something that's a process, a journey that doesn't have an end point or an end meaning?
Yeah.
That it's a positive out of that.
And I think it just really talks to that idea that we are so much more than what we reduce ourselves down to through a medical approach or through pathology, you know, and that's no judgment on that, because that's simply a paradigm.
It's the diagnosis, isn't it?
It is.
Sometimes the diagnosis is as much a blessing as it is a curse.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, I think it's just wise to take a step back also and realise that that's a dominant paradigm within our society, and for women it can be really disempowering. You know, it can be really devastating and disempowering if that's what we choose to hand ourselves over to. You know, I've never been on the Western, I guess, path in terms of dealing with infertility or fertility issues. But I know from so many women who've, you know, perhaps looked into IVF or taken certain drugs to help boost ovulation or boost fertility, that it can be really isolating and feel really difficult, and not only with what's happening with them at a chemical level if you're taking synthetic hormones, but how much perhaps you're not really felt like you're being treated as a person, but as opposed to being a problem to fix, you know, which we don't need fixing. You know, we're all whole, and our body is just enormously intelligent in terms of not directing its energy into that area. You know, there's I've really sticking to perhaps backtrack. I found out probably about 7 years ago that I had PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which results in imbalance. It's basically caused by a hormone imbalance. So there's too high testosterone levels, which means that the body has difficulty releasing an egg. And I had a lot of treatment through traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, which has been proven now to be incredibly successful in terms of treating fertility issues and having pregnancy achievement. But it was through my sort of journey on that path that I really got to understand that holistic view of the body and the innate intelligence within the body to achieve what the body, mind, and spirit ultimately is desiring to achieve. And I fell pregnant the first time that I tried and had a miscarriage with that pregnancy, and then went on to have my son. And so PCOS proved not to be a big issue for me. I am having more challenges this time around, having not had a period since my son was born, which was over 2 years ago. So I'm sort of embarking on that journey again, and it brings up a whole new range of challenges, because I guess I'm not where I thought I would be, you know. I thought I would have been, you know, have my period back and sort of perhaps be being pregnant with my second child by now.
And there's a lot of grief in that as well, isn't there? Do you feel like you have the space to grieve that vision or that future that isn't?
Yeah, and it's funny because I didn't think that I was really feeling the loss, and there was a kind of couple of instances recently where some emotions bubbled up around it, and I really realised that I have been feeling a loss there, you know, and that I have, even though intellectually I get that, you know, that it's going to happen, and I have an intense sense that it's going to happen, so I don't feel that loss every day by any stretch, but it is a path that I'm really exploring quite deeply, and I'm exploring it, you know, for, I guess it shifts and changes in terms of how you tackle something like this. You know, you can choose to tackle it through a purely Western medicine approach, where you would go and see an IVF doctor and you would take the hormones and you would fix it that way, or there's Clomid, or there's other things that you can do, or you can really focus on your diet, and try and shift things that way. You can look at meditation or mindfulness or yoga. You can look at a lot of the emotional side of things, which I actually think is where there's a lot to be said for doing the work.
So what for you is the emotional resonance of infertility?
So the key challenge with infertility is ultimately that the body is sitting in a higher masculine energy than it is feminine energy. So our body is always seeking balance between the two sides. You know, call it the yin and the yang, call it positive, negative, call it masculine, feminine, whatever it is. Our body is always seeking to balance those things out, and our hormone production is happening in every moment. Our brain is sending signals to produce our hormones, and particularly in a Western society, we have such high incidences of infertility rates now, and there's so many reasons for this, but what really rings true for me, and what I've been sitting with recently, has really been that idea that as women, we, in order to be something in this world, we've really had to sit a lot and really generate a lot of that kind of masculine yang kind of do, be, have it all kind of energy. You know?
Yeah, that's what I really feel from that as well, is that complete disconnection from the feminine. But really for me, like being a doula and seeing so many women in practice through that, even like I know we're talking about infertility, but moving beyond that in a very feminine space of birthing and creating life and potentially losing life, and all of those processes involved in being a woman, is a disconnection with being a woman.
Being a woman, and that vulnerability, that nurturing. And I mean, ultimately, if you look at it, even just the jobs that we have in society, the nurturing, the vulnerable jobs, they're not valued.
No,
you know?
they're not at all.
Our society values the jobs that get shit done, you know,
and that earn money,
and that earn good money.
Yeah,
you know, and that show that we can control things and work on outcomes and fit as much as you can into your life. And we start to build our self-worth on those things, you know.
Yes. And so much also for me when we're talking about the feminine is this concept even of sexuality. So that sexuality, the way that I feel that so many women, particularly our younger women, view is this very masculine version of porn.
Yes.
You know, like we're growing up in this culture where young kids that's their first sexual, I don't know if you'd call it an experience, but their first opening up of that world is the world of porn.
Yes.
And that completely dismisses any sorts of deep feminine sacred energy. It's all very much sitting sexually in the masculine.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, there are girls today who wouldn't even know what that means. And I reflect back onto my own experiences, and we were really cultured to be all about satisfying the boy and the man, and kind of making them feel more of a man. And you know,
and our bits are a little bit icky, you know. They're sticky, and maybe they're a little bit smelly at different times. Yeah. And we just kind of don't want to know about that.
No. And if you think about even the magazines you used to read, like whether it was Dolly or Girlfriend, and it was all about how to give great oral sex. Yes, you know, it was never about how
to receive.
No.
Yes. Good point.
And so I think that there's a real extension of this in terms of infertility, where, you know, to be a fully embodied, what we would say as a fertile woman, infertility issues at a sort of psychosomatic, sort of psycho-spiritual level are ultimately not feeling enough as a woman. So that's whether you're not feeling enough sexually in your woman, as a woman, you're not owning your womanhood, you're not feeling that you are doing enough in the world or being enough. And that is a key thing that a lot of fertility issues come out of, like PCOS, endometriosis, unexplained absence of period. A lot of that they're symptoms of disconnection and perhaps lack of self-worth, which are really deep-seated things that women can carry with them for a long time. You know, I'm quite sure that I had PCOS when I was going through puberty, you know, because I was put on the pill when I was 14 or 15, I think it was, and I was on the pill for 10 years before I really thought about it. And I'm sure that masked issues for me. And
so in naturopathy, we would look at it that way, that so in mainstream medicine, the cure-all for any sort of menstrual problem really is the pill, because the pill makes everything, in commas, normal again.
Yes.
So if there's pain, it diminishes. If there's too much blood flow, it diminishes that. And if their cycles are regular, it regulates the cycle. But I think what's largely misunderstood is that a period on a pill is not a real period.
No.
So a real period is all about energetically as well as physiologically cleansing, pulling all of the excess hormones out of the body, moving it through the body, and there's an energetic emotional cleansing that goes with that, but even physiologically that's what happens. We have periods of building and strengthening our body, and then we have periods of shedding and cleansing and being more yin and moving through our femininity and being allowed to sit in that. So the pill is kind of like running a car with no oil. So the car will keep running, but underneath it's getting more and more wear and tear. That symptom is getting pushed deeper into the body. So generally then when a woman chooses to come off the pill, which generally is when she wants to have a baby, you've got a whole lot of hormones in there that are now dysfunctional or in excess. And then you've got problems that already existed that are now 10 years down the track further into the body.
Yes. And even the meanings behind those things as well. I mean, I think that there's so much to be said for our emotional patterning, or the kind of subconscious belief systems that we start to hold on to, and how much they can manifest into physiological issues. And you can peel back these layers so much and really start to question where they come from, but ultimately the flip side of that is also to how do you nurture those energies, how do you bring more of the feminine, and how do you create space to feel into where there's that perhaps sense of lack, because ultimately we're always in balance and nothing is really missing, and that's the challenge I think too with women on this fertility journey, and what I'm really feeling called to support, not only myself through it but also other women who are going through it, who feel like that they're somehow inferior to other women, or inferior to this model of what's held up as being womanly, because there's that idea that, you know, to be fertile is to be a woman.
Yes. That's a very deep cultural message too.
It is.
So you were deeply honoured and valued traditionally as a woman for the ability to create and give birth to life.
Yes.
So if you are unable to do that, even tribally, you would have been at the bottom of the pecking order.
Yeah. And that's big stuff to work through.
Is that?
And it's the Chinese medicine philosophy which really, really resonates with me, because it's been so powerful on my own journey, and even just really being able to see that it's assisting me to find the answers within myself, because ultimately the answers that we are always seeking outside of us are really, you know, really within us. And there's a great woman, Dr. Randine Lewis. She was a medical doctor and trained as a medical doctor for many, many years and was really successful, and she found that she was having her own fertility challenges, and Western medicine didn't have the answers for her, and so she went and looked into Chinese medicine and ultimately trained as a doctor of Chinese medicine. And she holds these fabulous retreats in America called The Fertile Soul, and she's written a beautiful book called The Way of the Fertile Soul, and it's ultimately about unlocking creative potential, because seeing that often to be able to access our fertility as women, it's about letting go of so much of what we've built up to shield ourselves from the world around us, or kind of tell ourselves we are in order to get true to the essence of our truth, which can be deep, challenging spiritual work. But she writes this beautiful passage. She says, within the body there is a current of intelligent energy, a spark which not only gives life but maintains all of its vital functions. Our intention is to uncover the most essential foundation of your life and live from it. It anchors you when you encounter challenges or negative psychic loops and guides you into and through pregnancy and motherhood. The only way to stop playing those negative loops is to go to their root and unhook them. This is not a mental process. It is an energetic one, and it requires your full participation, body, mind, and soul. And that's really the journey that I'm on, and that I'm really inviting other women to perhaps go on if they're willing. I mean, there is always the Western model to go down, and that's totally okay if that's resonating with you. But it wasn't one that has resonated with me. So I suppose I've felt really called to go down this path, and it's not a conventional path, I suppose, because we want to fix stuff. We want we want to have control again. We want to create what we feel is lacking in our lives.
It's so hard to let go of that control, I imagine.
Yeah, I think fertility is a classic one because we are so conditioned to strategize and control and want to have things in a certain order, and we see everybody else doing things in a certain order around us, and if it doesn't happen for us, then we feel like, oh no, like we're not doing it right, or our life's not the way it should be, and all of that stuff is just injected beliefs. We're kind of living outside of kind of ourselves in a way, but to expect ourselves not to do that is also really challenging too, because ultimately we're social creatures, and we live in this really Western world, and there's this constant desire to grow and desire to achieve and to surrender, which is ultimately what this process asks of you to do, particularly as independent women who have been able to really set their sights on and achieve whatever they want. Fertility issues can really bring them into a grinding halt, because it's that one thing that they can't control that they really, really want to control.
Yeah, it's really true.
And, I know that my Chinese doctor, she says, women will come in and they just want to be fixed, like, fix me. And there's a lot of women who don't have the patience for Chinese medicine because it's energetic work. It works in tune with the body. It's really, really helping the body to heal itself and helping the body to get back into alignment. And sometimes we don't have the time for that. Sometimes we aren't willing to do that hard work, and it can be hard work, and like, I'm not kind of beating around the bush either. You have to be willing to do it and want to go down that path. And yeah, it's a really interesting journey, and one that I don't even think of myself though as as infertile, because I suppose I've got a child, so that's one small thing.
I wouldn't say it's small, but anyway.
But I just believe so innately in our body's wisdom to create what it is that we so intimately desire. And there are also...
So in that, are you really talking about living your soul's purpose?
Yes, and also I think too, there's a lot of women who get to a certain age, I think, and feel like, oh no, I should be having a baby now. But they might not really, really, truly want to. Or there might be something out of balance in their relationship. Or there might be a fear that they're not addressing. Because the body is so, so intelligent for our unconscious is more powerful than we give it credit for, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so whatever's in your head and in your heart or in your emotions is inevitably going to come out in a physical state.
Yes.
And so the physical representation is really just the red flag that halts you because the previous keys or red flags, or the that whole adage of lessons by the feather, the brick, the sledgehammer.
Yes.
lesson, so depending on, you know, how big that fall from grace is, you know, how quickly do we learn that lesson?
Yeah.
And I wonder sometimes if we're offered these small opportunities, the feather, and we ignore those, and we're offered the brick, and then we're offered the sledgehammer, and that sometimes is our body that puts up a really big red flag that says, I'm literally not working in the way that you want so that you see me.
Yes, and in fact, I mean, because I think there's still a lot of stuff, and even in some of the Chinese medicine that I read, that it suggests that there's something wrong with you if your body's not fertile, which I actually really disagree with, because I think that our body is just reflecting what our unconscious is desiring. So if there is some reason why our unconscious is going, nah, you know, there's a fear here, we're not going here, you know, like, there's stuff you need to work on, you know. So, and I've seen this happening, I've done enough work in this to see this, that like, our bodies are so intelligent. And
so if you're stuck in this moment and you can't see the wood for the trees in yourself and in your condition, and perhaps you're willing to look at what those things might be, how do you even start that process?
Yeah, and that's the one that we're really going to explore, and it's a big one because it can be so multi-layered. I mean, how do we get to the bottom of that? You know, where am I feeling vulnerable that I'm not owning? Where are my fears? Where are my deepest fears that I can't even speak to anyone about? What are my fears that I can't even write down? You know, like, because we all have them, you know, and for some of us we can continue on and we can shut them out, or they might, you know, our issue might be a recurring immune condition problem where we're constantly getting sick every winter, or, you know, there might be some other way that we're kind of getting that wake-up call to slow down, or to get in tune with what, you know, is really being taught to us, whether we're wanting to see it or not. But another really powerful thing, because ultimately there'll be things that you can do to still make it happen. You know, you can perhaps go and have IVF, or you can have.
It doesn't have to be one or the other, though.
No,
either,
it doesn't.
Does it?
No, because it can really be both alongside each other, and that can work beautifully, because Chinese medicine can really assist the body to deal with all the IVF drugs, and to deal with the hormones, and to help the pregnancy proceed, and all of those kinds of things. So they can work together beautifully, and a lot of women really do that, and do that with great success. And there was an International Fertility Symposium recently in Canada, which was kind of a bringing together of the two approaches, and there's been some great studies done in terms of how well they can each complement each other. You know, the acupuncture can improve the success rate of IVF.
Yes.
Which is really powerful
and of
stuff.
implantation and hormones.
All
and,
those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is, you know, and my kind of way of approaching the world, and is my way right now in this moment in time. You know, perhaps in a 12 months, if things haven't shifted, then I might change my tune. But it's certainly not prescribing that it should be this way for everyone or anyone.
But even in that process, if you did all of this work and then you got to the end and you were like, my only option now, if I really want to do this, is medical intervention, then that itself would be a shedding and a letting go of whatever it is that you need to shed and let go of.
That's right. I mean, and it might be an owning the side that I don't want to own around that, you know, like the fact that, owning the resistance that I have on that.
Yes,
approach.
And who am I if I, in commas, fail at this approach that I've attached so much to?
Yeah, totally.
And who am I if I'm just like Susie Joe, who did that last week without any other thought process around it? Absolutely, that's kind of big, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it's also really powerful too, because, I mean, I know that there's, in my case, I think some underlying fears around how can I be the mother that I want to be and be really present for my son, as well as have another child and grow my business and be a wife, and all of these things that I see my roles as. And that's just an unbalanced perception that is there, that I think that I'm holding on to, that says I have to do things a certain way. You know, there's that concept that we kind of are our own prisoner in a way, you know, because of you know, the sky's not the limit, our belief system is. You know, so our belief systems of one way of doing things is often what holds us back most. And so perhaps I'm holding on to an idea of how I need to parent, which is actually, funnily enough, preventing that happening again so quickly, you know, because I might be seeing that it needs to be a certain way, which it doesn't. It's a perception, you know.
I really loved how earlier when you and I were talking, you were talking about seeing yourself as completely whole, that you're never lacking.
Yes.
So you're saying I'm infertile in terms of, at the moment, my reproductive system is infertile, but where am I therefore carrying the fertility within myself, my soul, my body, my work?
Yes.
Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So that's really powerful work, and work that I've been exploring a lot recently. That idea that there is constant balance in the universe, and therefore there's constant balance in nature, there's constant balance in our bodies. So there's nothing missing. So where we see that we're not fertile, well, where are we fertile? Because it's just changing form within our bodies. It's just in a form we haven't recognised yet. So in my case, I've built a business, and I've constantly got all these ideas that are just coming to me at any moment in time around.
It's hugely creative space, isn't it?
Really, and ultimately, like, fertility is creation. And
yes.
so I'm creating in my head, and I'm creating and manifesting in a physical form a business and an event space and relationships with businesses and all of this stuff.
Yes,
so
you're literally giving birth to.
I'm giving birth to a business. Yes, and it might not be the form that I necessarily want it in. I mean, I'm grateful for that form and I love that form, but I want it in the baby form too. Yeah. But the more we can see the form that it is in, the more it creates space to also be born in the form that we want it.
So it's kind of sitting in gratitude for where else that sits in your world. So is that how you're doing it?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a really big way in which I'm doing it. And because as long as, and it comes back to that lack mentality, as long as we feel like we're missing something, it almost continues to elude us. And I don't like to use this example, but people throw it around all the time. People say, oh, just relax, go take a holiday, like when people aren't having a baby. Yeah. And they miraculously fall pregnant.
Yes.
And it's that, all the people who did IVF the first cycle and then, oh my God, they had like naturally the second time and they weren't even trying. And that just talks to that psychological pressure, that emotional pressure that we put on ourselves to perform in this space, to kind of achieve, and it's like you're putting so much focus on something, and it almost just makes it all the more elusive because you're not appreciating the form in which it is, just allowing yourself to be.
And in universal laws, you're not even feeling that, are you? You're being very directive on pinpointing this is the thing that I want, as opposed to emotionally feeling what that feels like, or calling it in by emotionally feeling that space. Yeah,
and allowing it to flow through you as opposed to willing it, pushing it. Because as long as you're pushing, you're going to get resistance. It's when you can get to a state of flow and allowing something that is when it can come to you.
So when you're talking about you're seeing fertility in your business and creation in your business world and within your own creativity within yourself, and then you're recognizing that potentially is not that it's an imbalance, but an imbalance in where you want your fertility to sit.
Yes.
You're not saying you're doing less of that stuff. What you're saying is you're recognizing it and being grateful for it, so that it becomes a consciousness about that you're not lacking and you're not infertile.
Yes.
You are incredibly fertile.
Yes.
But by sitting in gratitude, how does that work, that those energies then are not seen or something like that? I don't quite understand.
Well, gratitude's so powerful because when you get when you achieve gratitude and you feel it in your heart, it creates healing in your body because our body's basically made of energy, and when we create healing, it shifts us, it basically affects our cellular function. So Dr. Bruce Lipton is a big pioneer in this work, as is Dr. John Demartini, in terms of the biology of belief and the impact that at a molecular level our cells are retaining our beliefs about ourselves and about our world that we live in and about our bodily function.
So when you recognise creation in a different form, you're no longer seeing it as not being there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, there's other ways we can do it too. There's, at a perhaps simpler level, there's also, if we know that infertility or fertility issues are a result of an imbalance in masculine and feminine energies, then what can we do to change our behaviours to sit in a more balanced state? And then there's also other work.
Do you have recommendations for that? Like, what would you say for women who are sitting in a highly masculinized state, potentially not even aware of it, because in terms of the perceived female image, they fit that?
Yes.
And we're saying, but that's not the divine, sacred, feminine goddess energy that is what you're inherently designed for.
Yeah.
How do you start the process of seeking that, do you feel?
I think it's recognising certain patterns and behaviours that you have around really being control or outcome focused, or also trying to when you get that sense that you're a human doing as opposed to a human being, that kind of do, schedule, fit stuff in, cram your days, don't give yourself permission to slow down and retreat within yourself, get quiet, nurture, feel your emotions as opposed to shutting them down. All of those things. We're actually going to do an episode on the Divine Feminine, which I think, George, you've got some great knowledge in, which I'd love to unpack further with you. But it's really about also noticing how if you're feeling in your body that you're a bit out of your body as well. You know, that sense that you kind of get when you're so busy that you're jumping from one thing to another, or you're in a space and you feel like you're not quite you, like you're breathing a bit more shallow and it's just, you feel a bit off. That can often be when you're sitting in that kind of masculine energy. You know, it's just that really, it almost thrives on it though at the same time. It can almost be an adrenaline based feeling where you're always at that level. That can be kind of a telltale sign. Yeah.
For me, also, it would be getting back in touch with your feminine bits of creation.
Absolutely, and that's a big one, and really getting in touch with sexuality.
Yes.
Yeah,
which is really confronting, isn't it?
It is, because so many of us have not had that experience.
So I'd love to know what you think as well, because I'm kind of thinking in that moment, little baby steps that I would give women. Like, then certainly I'm happy to talk about this in birth as well, because certainly when I'm dealing with women that potentially even have sexual abuse or reasons why they traumatically don't want to connect with those feminine parts of their body, that sometimes it's really baby steps. So you might seek a practitioner that would do body work.
Yes.
And actually really tune in, or Reiki, or any of those sorts of energetic works, kinesiology, acupuncture even, that are really going to look at your body's physical manifestations as an energetic release that's needed, something that's emotionally contained there that needs releasing so that you can move through it. And I would be doing things like dancing sensually, placing your hand on your womb as you breathe. You will not believe how difficult that is for some women to do. So even in my women's circles, when we're doing particular meditation practices, I'll say place your hand on your heart or on your womb as you center into yourself. And I would say 9 times out of 10, everyone goes for the heart.
Wow.
I know. And every time I see it in a circle, I go, wow.
Yeah.
Why is it so uncomfortable to even just energetically touch your womb? I'm not even talking about your vagina, your womb.
And there are just, I mean, immediately that just comes to, there's so many challenges there, you know, it's body image stuff that can come up too, you know, oh, my stomach's, you know, like, you know, too flabby or whatever it is, you know, there's that stuff that comes up about it, as well as the deeper sexual things I think that it can represent, or even that perception of lack around what the womb represents, you know, what birth trauma might have come up for them that they've not moved through yet, and so they perhaps don't feel woman enough in some way.
Yeah, heaps
you know?
Of things. But in terms of connecting with femininity, and particularly I imagine with fertility, when you're literally wanting all of the energy of your body that's gone everywhere else in your body except to those organs, you're really wanting to re-energize them. And wherever thought and energy go, blood flow is going to go, and therefore nutrients, hormones, all of the juicy stuff that you want is going to go there. And so I want to know what you think. I'm in my head, doula hat on, kind of going, I would want to see you potentially masturbating. I would want to see you allowing yourself to receive oral pleasure from a really, you know, a husband, a partner, or someone who's really loving towards you. I would want to see you loving your body. So even holding a hand on places like your womb or your vagina and just sending love or gratitude to that area, focusing even energetically on those chakras, expanding on those organs, seeing them with loving light and heat and blood flow to them. That's all, and that's like tick, 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 all of the above. Yeah, so what else? I really want to know. Yoga, really, really powerful. Intention, the power of intention. So starting my day, you know, I really try to do a lot with a really loving and purposeful intention about what I want to, how I want to be in that day, you know, what I want to get out of that day, and the presence that I want to have with myself around tuning into what I'm needing. That's a big one, isn't it? Tuning into your needs, because that follows your desires, which follows your passion and your soul purpose, and therefore your route to gratitude. And I think also just getting into that habit of asking yourself, you know, what's going on for me now? Like, you know, when you can feel that you're getting a little bit out of balance, or not feeling really in your body, A check-in.
A check-in.
What is that? What does it feel like? What's that emotion?
A bit of
Where is it
introspection,
sitting?
you know, building in some, you know, it might only be a minute that you have to really kind of get grounded and get present, but inviting moments of introspection into your day to really check back in with yourself, because it can be so easy to get to the end of the day and really sort of not even feel like you've been in yourself, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
We can have days like that. Like yin-based yoga, so really gentle, slow movements, sitting in certain postures for long periods of time, feeling into pain that might come up in certain areas of the body. Definitely the visualization of light and the different energy that sits in different areas of the body. Like there's times where I can definitely feel like I can feel the energy in my reproductive organs. I can feel it, you know, and that's so powerful to me, to be able to zone into different areas of your body and feel the energy in there. You know, it's quite amazing. And there's so much we can do with work like that. But yeah, I mean, that's a really key one for me to continue to explore, because it can be so easy to kind of still go about your life with your to-do list or with all the outside pressures that we have. And especially in a fertility journey, to be wanting these things, wanting this kind of end goal to occur, and it be so elusive, and then still love our bodies enough to allow it. You know, there was definitely a time after I had my miscarriage, before I had my son, where I really felt betrayed by my body.
Yes.
And I'm sure that there's so many women on the fertility journey who feel betrayed by their body because it's not playing ball, you know.
Totally.
It's not, you know, you're doing everything right. You know, you're eating all the right food, taking all the right supplements, you're doing everything your doctor tells you, and yet it's still not happening. You know, and we can feel very disconnected, like our body is separate from us, but our body is us. You know, it's us talking to us. And sometimes we don't want to listen to what it's saying, you know, asking us to do. And so it's just about finding the practices that align with what feels comfortable for us. You know, and some of those will be challenging, you know, the things like masturbation, the things like staring at your body naked, really kind of honouring ourselves with a, you know, a sacred space of and willingness to explore our depths, you know, but there's so much beauty and opportunity that can come from that process of going into those, and especially for women who grew up, you know, who were never encouraged or celebrated to explore their bodies. You know, this is such a gift to give yourself on this journey to do that, especially if you've never had that before, because there's so much power that we have within us that it's just waiting to be accessed. And perhaps, you know, in some divine way, being on this journey is the permission to do that we otherwise may have never travelled.
Yes, definitely.
So that's kind of the fertility journey, I suppose, in a nutshell, at least in my experience. And it's an ongoing one, and one that I'm continuing to peel back layers on. If you're wanting to read more, I've actually been writing a series on the fertility journey on my blog, suburbansandcastles.com, which really talks to some of the key things that we've unpacked in this episode, and perhaps goes a little bit deeper in terms of the societal values around the fertility journey, and also some of the perceptions of lack that we might have on this. So I really invite you to check that out.
I think they're fantastic tools in those blogs as well. And if you're really wanting extra help to unpack your womanhood, your journey, your motherhood, your issues with children, and certainly diet, lifestyle that's integrated in that, please come and visit me at naturopathicbirth.com.au. And we really invite you to be interactive with our Facebook page. We love feedback. We love knowing what's calling to you and what's speaking to you and where you'd like us to go deeper. So that's Nourishing the Mother on Facebook. So until next time, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.